Hello and welcome back to the Developing Solutions with Sitecore Print Experience Manager video training series. In this video, we'll be discussing the PXM architecture and in particular settings within the Sitecore repository. So first off, as we saw in some of the previous demos and examples, there are a number of areas within the Sitecore repository that have been added for Print Studio projects. There's a Print Studio section, which has a number of settings within that. If we go back to Sitecore, we can see the Print Studio item as well as the sub-item of Print Studio projects. As we create new projects, they'll appear here, and you can see the tree and the hierarchy of the items within that Print Studio project. Next, underneath modules, there's the Indesign Connector, and this in turn has a number of settings, particularly driving what's displayed in the plugin in the Indesign Connector. The default settings one shows default locations, and in particular, the default location for viewing images within the media library. You can use this to restrict what you see within that. Secondly, there's a list of template fields. This will filter down the type of fields that you're seeing from your Sitecore content items. There's an out-of-the-box list, and these include things like rich text, print text, single-line text, multi-line text, images, etc. If you have other compound item types or custom item types that you want to see within the Indesign Connector, you simply need to go through and add those to the list of selected items. Another setting here within the default settings is allow content updates from InDesign. If this is turned off, it basically means that you can restrict people within the Indesign Connector making changes to the underlying Sitecore content items. Another section setting is the libraries in the content browser, and you can use this to choose where you can see your content tree from within that Indesign Connector. So here we have Sitecore Content Home. If we wanted to show developing in Sitecore, we could do that. Now, interesting thing, this item type is actually extendable. So where we have library start node 1, you can go to the underlying template of content browser settings and make a new item type and call it library start node 2, and this allows you to actually define a number of content insertion points, not just the one. So that is extendable. Lastly, under the other settings, we have transformations. This is where we define our transformation sets. We'll be doing this a little bit further as we go through further demonstrations and exercises within this training video. And another key section here is libraries, renderers library. These are all the renderers that are used by all of the common element types within InDesign. So for example, our text frame renderer here points to this underlying code. As we build custom renderers, we'll be adding those here to our renderers library and in turn referencing our custom classes. In addition to those modules there, we also have app settings here. These are used primarily for documents that are sent to InDesign server and used in automatic publication. So in particular, there's publish paths. So you want to customize these to match the location of the PXM publishing folders. So this is where InDesign server will create those documents. And in turn, that needs to be added in IIS and accessible such that when a document appears there, it can be viewed and downloaded if, of course, that's part of your process. As well, as emails are generated by PXM and sent through the system, the email message templates, the headers, the footers can all be customized as well. So those are the majority of the settings within the Print Studio item within Sitecore. Similarly, in the media library, there's also a Print Studio projects section, and this is really important because the master documents are stored within this library. Now, if we look at the master document, for example, here, the launch Sitecore design, you can see that it has that underlying file asset of that InDesign file containing the master document. And as well, it has all of the styles and the layers and the color information and all that other information that was extracted from that document when it was uploaded into Sitecore. Lastly, again, this document, this master document, refers to a transformation set. And again, a transformation set is mapping HTML elements and classes to InDesign styles. And so because your InDesign styles are generally specific to a design and that design lives in the master document, you can set that here in your Sitecore settings for that master document as well. So looking at our overall PXM architecture, at the core of PXM, of course, we have our PXM core, and that is installed as a Sitecore package. And you can see here that that adds those items that we just looked at in the Sitecore repository. So the various templates, the various settings, the API itself, as well as a number of the services. That's installed as part of the PXM core, as well as the web service that talks to InDesign and InCopy. Within InDesign and InCopy, there are client connectors that are installed on either of those as plugins. And then lastly, if we're looking at InDesign Server and automation with PXM, there are a number of services. First is the Print Studio dashboard server. And what that does is that receives those requests from Sitecore as jobs. And those are in turn queued through MSM So the dashboard server will receive those jobs from Sitecore and create queue entries in the Microsoft message queuing system. Those are in turn picked up by the InDesign processing service and sent to the InDesign server through SOAP. The other thing that the dashboard server does is it sends those completion tasks to SMTP. So as it receives those completed tasks from the InDesign server, it then will send an email saying that that job was created. Lastly, again, going back to Sitecore, we list all these other services because these services within Sitecore, the rules engine, the content repository, security, language, versioning, workflow, these are all core to PXM as well. And so when you're using the Indesign Connector or when you're using the InDesign server, all of those things come into play, and security can be applied just as you would for any Sitecore content and Sitecore web project. You can be applying those in the print world as well. And so those are features that really come from the Sitecore core repository, but are listed here in the architecture because we're bringing those features to InDesign through the various functionalities.